My name is Veronica. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana at Southern Baptist Hospital. And I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old. And when I was at the Volunteers of America, I was in, I don't know if they would call them orphanages back then or just homes where they would keep the babies before they were adopted. But the code name that they gave me when I was admitted into that home was Hope. And from what I'm told, all the babies through the Volunteers of America were given different code names, like Grace or Faith or Charity or Love, and they gave me the code name Hope. I remember that I was in my room, and I think I was probably around 5 or 6 years old. I know I was in kindergarten when they told me. I don't remember a whole lot of details, but I do remember them telling me that I was adopted and somebody gave me up to give me a better life. I never heard them speak badly about my birth mother. It was more like she gave you up so you could have a better life. But I do remember from that point on, you know, it did make more sense to me because I always felt kind of strange. Like I just knew something was different. And when I was at school on the playground, I remember, you know, like every other kid, you get teased by different kids. But when you're adopted and you get teased, you think that maybe that's the reason that you were put up for adoption, that something was wrong with you. When kids make fun of you, the way you look, how you act, it's like, well, what's wrong with me? Is this why my real mommy didn't want me? That's exactly what I remember thinking when I was 5 or 6 years old in kindergarten. My family is African American, but you know, they're mixed with a lot of different things. Like my grandparents were Creoles, which back then in New Orleans, Creoles meant that they were free black people of color. They were mixed with a lot of different things, but they were also very fair complexioned. You know, they did have more of the European dominated features, you know, like my mom did. My dad was more my complexion, but he had greenish, grayish eyes. So it was a little weird for me growing up, especially being in a family where you saw that our features were so different. Being African American, you know, we come in all different varieties and skin tones and skin complexions and all sorts of different things. And I had more African dominated features, I guess you could say, and my parents didn't. So it did give me a low self-esteem for most of my life. It made me feel unattractive, and it only intensified that fact that I needed to know where I came from and who I was. When I was in school, you know, a friend of my family's, a friend of mine, told my teacher I was adopted. So she told me I couldn't do the family tree project, and because I had no family. And of course, I went home and told my parents. I don't really remember a whole lot what happened after that, but I do remember my mom went to the school. So, you know, I don't imagine it was pretty. But, you know, it's just little things like that, you know, that they don't understand why you have that strong desire to know, because everything your whole life has just been kept from you and hidden from you. I remember there were times in high school that I would go in my room and there was a paper that my mother gave me when I was younger. When I asked her, you know, what does my mother look like? What does my father, who are these people? And she handed me a paper that she got in 1981 from the Volunteers of America, and this is what it had on it. And this is all it was. It says background information, female, born, you know, the day I was born. It says my birth information, my weight, my length, and it says a little bit of information about the natural mother and the natural father. But this is all it was. So there would be times when I was a teenager and I would go in my room and I would pull this paper out and I would just stare at it. And I would just wonder, you know, who are these people? This could be anybody. When I was in high school, I used to, you know, like most teenage girls, I would have sleepovers by other friends' houses. And when I was around like their families, especially them with their moms, just to see the similarities and how different their family unit was and how they felt more like, I guess, meshed together. I don't know if that's how you would say it. But I wanted to be a part of something like that so bad. And, you know, my parents loved me, and you know, there were good times, you know, but there were also some bad times. Things that were said to me and my family that made me feel more and more like I did not fit in, like I was adopted. An example of that would be when I was younger. I remember driving down the highway. Well, I wasn't driving, but when I was probably, I guess probably under 10 years old, maybe. It was my mom and my mom's friend and me and my mom's friend's daughter, who was also adopted. And we passed up a Goodwill. And her mother said she wanted to get some clothes from the Goodwill. And my friend said, oh, I don't want no clothes from Goodwill. Those clothes are used. And her mom said, I don't know why it makes a difference. The both of you came from the Goodwill. You were used. And it's things like that that I remember. And my mom was in the car, and my mom didn't even say anything. My dad would say things to me when he would get really angry. One time he said I couldn't call him dad, I couldn't call my mom mom, when he was very, very angry. And you know, my parents were probably frustrated because they didn't know what was going on with me. I was frustrated, I was angry because I felt different, I felt unloved, I felt unwanted, and they didn't know how to deal with that. And one problem is that a lot of adoptive parents, most of them don't receive the proper type of counseling that they need, especially when I was born. I was born in '81. The counseling wasn't there. You know, they weren't really ready to, I believe in my opinion, to raise an adopted child, because raising an adopted child is not the same as raising your own biological child. And so many people think that there's no difference. And I'm telling you, there is a big difference, because we have special needs. And you have to know how to meet our needs and how to help us deal with whatever we're going through. I started searching around 2005, and I found them in 2012. First thing I did was I called the Volunteers of America to see, can I get more updated non-identifying information, because that is what I was told to do. First thing I remember when I walked in the agency was she said to me, did you have a good life? And I'm thinking to myself, what difference does it make if I had a good life? That doesn't mean I was happy. That doesn't mean that everything was okay. Just because I had a good life, what is a good life anyway? What does that mean? So I went ahead and, you know, I gave them the money to get my non-identifying information, which took over a month for me to get back. When I got it, you know, it still had no names on it. You know, it was just pieces and pieces of information. So from that point on, it took me on a long, long search. It's an interesting thing that happened to me when I did start my search, though. I was interning at a hospital when I was getting my undergrad degree, and I was talking to some of the nurses that worked in the unit that I was interning in, explaining to them my situation and what was going on with my adoption search. And I said, you know, do any of you work at, you know, that hospital? How can I get information from there? One of the patients that was in the hospital, she overheard what I was discussing. And she said, oh, my husband, he used to do adoption law. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I said, what's his name? And she told me what his name was. And it sounded so familiar. And I still had the forms with me, because it was that same day that I had left the adoption agency to put in for my non-identifying information. And when I looked on the forms that I had, sure enough, it was her husband who had signed the legal documents for my parents to adopt me. And it just so happened that night that he came to visit her. And I actually had a chance to go up to him, and I gave him the paper and I said, you know, did you sign this? And he didn't remember actually signing it, but he said, this is from my law office. And, you know, I said, is there any way you can help me? Can you tell me anything? Unfortunately, because of laws and all kinds of foolishness, you know, all he could do was refer me to the state registry to put my name on it. But it was very emotional for me, because for me it felt like that was the first person I had come in contact with that was from my past, or that other life, I guess, if you will. I found a private investigator who actually, she helped me send letters to different churches, because from my non-identifying information, we found out that the family was Baptist, or so they said. So she said a great way to search is to start off in the Southern Baptist churches, because churches are usually really tight-knit communities. And if it's a big family, maybe somebody remembers them, because it turned out to be that my birth mother had 9 siblings, which I never would have imagined in my life. So I hand-wrote letters to some churches, and she sent them out. And I also made a flyer. I don't know if you can see this flyer that I made, and we sent this flyer to churches as well. And I did it in crayon, and I wrote it, I guess as a kid would write it, because I wanted it to really touch their hearts, is what I wanted it to do. So I spelled some things kind of wrong. And, you know, basically it says, "Dear birth mother, I have been looking for you and no one will tell me who you are. Do you remember me? Please find me." When I asked my mom for all the information she had, I was in high school. I was, I think, 15 or 16 years old, and she handed me the whole package. She says, "It's yours. You should have it. You know, it belongs to you." So I have everything. This is like the whole packet from when I was admitted into the Volunteers of America nursery, which I don't even know if a lot of people even have things like this. But it talks about the date that I was admitted, my weight, my height, and it says what nurses would watch me. So I was being watched in different shifts, like, you know, AM, mid-shift, PM shift. And when you think about that and you're a newborn, it makes it really hard to form any kind of bond with anybody, you know, or any kind of attachment when you got different people watching you throughout the day in different shifts, and you don't know if these people really care or if they're interns or, you know, who they are. So when I was born, basically what it says on some of this paperwork is that whenever they would touch me, I was jittery. It said that I was jittery and that I perspired. I sweat more than a normal infant did. And that's probably, I would imagine, from some sort of separation anxiety, or from whatever my birth mother was dealing with, stress or whatever, or, you know, at the time of her pregnancy. Obviously it affected me. And I did this the entire time I was at the home. Whenever somebody touched me, I was jittery. And my parents, even after they brought me home, which was 6 weeks after I was born, so it was over a month before they even brought me home, and they said I still did it for a while, and they didn't know if something was wrong with me. Even now, I'm not somebody who really loves to be touched and hugged. The non-identifying information that they gave me, it says that the baby and the parents, adoptive parents, had bonded very well. And it says that I was placed with my adoptive parents within a week, is what they said in my non-identifying information. But these forms here, it clearly tells you the last day I was in there was in February 1982. So that was a lie. That's the first lie that I started to notice throughout my adoption records and all the information they gave me. But I think true bonding only really happens in the womb, you know, that mother-infant type bond. So I don't think you can truly bond with an adoptive mother. I don't know if that makes sense. You might be able to have some sort of close connection. Unfortunately, it didn't really happen for me with my parents. It just never did. The closest person I was with in my adoptive family was my dad's mother. And she died when I think I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. She died. And that was probably the closest connection I ever remember having in my life. After I finally hired a company, after going through several search angels and private investigators, I found a company that was able to locate her within like 48 hours after all the searching I had done. So they gave me all the information. You know, I paid for it. They gave me everything. They sent me all sorts of information, obituaries from my grandparents, aunts or uncles who had died, the siblings, what their names were, what her name was, where she lived, her occupation. So I was able to, I had a friend who's also a private investigator. So she contacted my birth mother for me, and she agreed to talk to me. But she refused to talk about anybody in her family. That was what I had to also agree to in order to get her to speak to me. She told my friend who does the investigative work that when I was born, she said she didn't want to hold me. They brought me to her, she freaked out. They had to take me away from her. She said that it was the worst pregnancy she ever had. And you know, when my friend called me and she told me these things, I was like, what kind of person is this? But I said, you know what, I'll call her and, you know, see. So I did call her one evening when I got home from work. And she spoke to me with such a coldness in her voice. I could not believe this was the same woman that my parents had told me so many years ago had wanted me to have a better life because she loved me so much. This did not even sound like a woman who cared at all. She told me that I could send her some pictures because I offered to send her some pictures of me when I was younger. She got the pictures and I called her and I said, you know, is this what you thought I would look like? You know, did you ever imagine it? And she's like I told you, I never thought about you. I just wanted to have you and then go on with the rest of my life, which is what she told me. And it was like I didn't even cry at that moment. I felt like I was so numb to hearing her say that. I just felt like there was nothing I could do. I felt like I've cried so many birthdays, so many holidays, just wondering if this woman thinks about me. And for her to sit there and just tell me that, it just put a bigger hole in my heart that was already there. Because of how she acted, I waited a long time, probably before I started to reach out to other family members, because she obviously was not going to give me that opportunity, but I felt like it's my right to know them. There were siblings in her family that admitted to me that they knew she was pregnant, that she ran off and she had me. And my first reaction that I'm thinking is like, why didn't you stop her? Why didn't you do anything? Why did you let me go? You know, you knew there was a baby somewhere, and you all admitted to me knowing, but you never stopped her. You know, and even to this day, I wonder, and I may never find out, they may never tell me why nobody did anything or why nobody came to look for me, or did they wonder if I was alive? Because obviously she was about 4 months pregnant, 4.5 months pregnant, I guess, when she left. So they knew she was pregnant, and then she came home and she had no baby. The funny thing is that I also found out, you know, that I had a brother from my non-identifying information. She has yet to admit to me that she has another child. She told me, she said, I have no other children. She doesn't want me to know about him at all. And the rest of my family is claiming to me that they don't know where he is. Whether or not that's true, or whether or not they're just saying it to keep her quiet, I don't know. I don't know, because there's so many lies in adoption. And I thought, you know, when I found her, when I found my birth family, that I was going to have closure and all my questions were going to be answered, but it just opened up more questions to things that are still being kept secret. My non-identifying information said he was 2 years old at the time she entered the maternity home. So he's about 2 years older than me. So right now he would be, I don't know, maybe 34, 35. All I know is his first name is Eric. You know, and if he does happen to see this, or somebody else sees it and they know who he is, you know, I just want him to know that I do want to know him. I would like to have a relationship with him. Everybody says with adoption, they keep things from you because they don't want you to get hurt. They don't want you to find out things because they're afraid you're going to get hurt. What they don't realize is that you've been hurt from day one. You've been hurt from the very beginning. You know, it's not going to do anything to you. I mean, how much more hurt can you be than being, you know, torn away from your mother at birth and having your identity taken away from you? I don't think anything can hurt more than that. So when people say, we don't want you to get hurt, you have to realize we're already hurt. It doesn't make a difference. I'm starting to get a sense of who I am, but not completely. It's still difficult. You know, right now I have 2 families, you know. we're born with two families. We have adoptive families and we have birth families. And one of the things I'm finding out is that it's like the only thing worse than not having a family at all is being a part of two different families and not feeling like you belong in either one of them. Because you have an adoptive family that you don't act like, you don't look like, and you kind of feel distant from. And then you find out you have a birth family, and when you've been separated from a family for 30 plus years, you know, you've been raised completely different. So you don't even know if you can fit in with them anymore. And that's, you know, those situations have come up just by meeting the few of my birth family members that I met. They've questioned a lot of things about the way I was raised. My birth mother, she was just really upset that my parents even told me I was adopted. She told me that how dare my parents tell me I was adopted. She did not even want me to know. She wanted me to remain in the dark, just to take this secret to her grave. Sometimes in the Black community, if you are Black, if you're an adoptee and you're African American, you know that Black people have this thing where they say you're not Black enough, which means, do you fit the stereotype of being an African American now? And I was worried about that with my birth family. I said to myself, you know, are they gonna think that I don't act Black enough? Are they gonna think that I don't fit in with Black people, with their family? And sure enough, my uncle brought up that question when I went out to meet him. I didn't know who was gonna do it, but sure enough, he did, and he questioned me whether or not I grew up around a lot of Black people, or if I knew a lot of Black people. And it made me, I kind of wanted to laugh, but at the same time, it made me really angry. Because I was thinking, and I didn't say this, but I was thinking to myself, you know what, if you wanted me to be raised a certain way, then somebody in your family should have stepped up and raised me. Then you could have raised me how you wanted me to come out. Adoption means, well, to me, adoption means secrecy and lies. And now you have open adoption, and people say they're more open with it. But those open adoptions, they don't always keep them open, because at any time, the adoptive parents can stop contact, or the birth mother or the birth father can stop contact. You know, anytime they want to. There's nothing to keep it open. I'm gonna say that I'm not completely against adoption, you know, and I know there's some people who are just hardcore, just against it, like it's evil, it's bad. And I'm not gonna say I'm against adoption. I'm against the way adoption is done. But the problem is they haven't found out the right way to do it yet. And that's, you know, who knows if they ever will. But it's the secrecy and lies. That's what adoption is to me right now. I would have him to, you know, please contact me. You know, I want to know you. I don't want anything from you other than to have a relationship with you. I am not sure what lies you've been told. I don't know why our birth mother is keeping this information from me, keeping it from you. But, you know, whatever she's telling you, you know, it's not true. You know, you do have a sister. I don't know if I'm your half-sister. I don't know if I'm your full-blooded sister. But I would like to have a relationship with you. So if you do see this, or anybody out there sees him, you know, like I said, his name is Eric, and he may have been born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in either 1978, 79, or even 1980. You know, please contact me. You know, I don't know what the rest of my birth family would say about you, but I can tell you that I want to know you. My advice for adoptive parents is to get as much counseling and education on adoption as you can. Don't be afraid, you know, to let your adoptive child learn about their birth family. You know, why can't you let the two families combine if it's an open adoption? Why does it have to be about secrecy and lies and, you know, fear? Just let them learn as much as they can, and it'll probably make your relationship with your adoptive child stronger. Because if you try to cover up anything, or if you don't allow them to talk about their feelings, in the future, in the long run, it's just gonna hurt you. And it's gonna make your relationship more distant. So, that's the main thing I can say is, find a professional who specializes in adoption-related issues, because there are a lot of therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists out there that are clueless. They are not specifically trained in adoption-related issues. So find someone who is, and make sure you get the kind of information and knowledge you need, because if you're not willing and open to doing that, then that means you're not ready to be an adoptive parent. There are a lot of people that say you shouldn't let your past, define who you are. But, that's what makes us who we are. And I think because of what happened to me, it made me a stronger person. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of times the way we are is because of our past or our backgrounds, what's happened to us. And I think I'm always going to be this kind of person who just wants to know things, that always wants to research things and find out about everything I can. And part of it is because my life has been covered up by so much secrecy and so many lies. I want to be open and honest about everything possible.